I've always enjoyed these interviews with these special guests. Today's special guest, Diana Goodman. Just real quick before I bring him out, I want to say a few things about him. You all know him as an incredible entertainer with his tribute to Elvis Presley. I've known this kid since he's like 9 years old, from being at the Image of the King contest in Memphis, Tennessee. He's grown up not just to be a great entertainer who loves Elvis Presley dearly, but he's a loving father, a great husband. He's a family man. And I just got so much respect for him. He's not just an ultimate Elvis world champion. He's an ultimate professional on stage and off. Please welcome our dear friend, Mr. Dean C.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Mr. Irv Cass. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for getting up, and I know we all had a good party last night. Who was up till about 1 or 2 in the morning? Most of us, right? Well, good. That means you're doing the festival right. That's right. This morning, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you to a lovely lady that I just had the chance to meet, but I've been studying for the last few weeks, getting ready for this particular interview. And this woman has lived several lives in this one lifetime. It's incredible to see some of the serendipitous moments that that Elvis influenced in her life, even when you didn't even realize it. We're going to go into some really great stories from throughout her entire life. But ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome to the Las Vegas Tribute Festival, Miss Diana Goodman, everybody. Big round of applause. Thank you so much for being here, Miss Diana. Here's your microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, isn't this woman beautiful, first off? Amazing.
You're so nice.
Thank you so much for being here and talking with us. I'm going to get this lamp out of the way so I can see you. You flew in from Atlanta, is that right?
I did.
Is that home for you?
It is.
That's cool. Anyone else?
A little bit north of Atlanta.
A little north of Atlanta?
We say Atlanta because that's where everybody knows.
Yes. Well, we're so glad you're here. You have had an incredible life. So many lives in one lifetime. And in my opinion, you've had destinies take you to so many interesting, cool places. I kind of want to start from the very beginning and kind of tell us about your upbringing and where you grew up and that sort of thing.
Well, when you're my age, that's a long time. That's a lot to talk about. We could do 90 minutes. I was born in a little town called Alma, Georgia, and it's about 200 miles south of Atlanta. And my mom was young, and back in those days, you got married a little younger than you do today. I was 35 when I got married, so big difference. So my mom went into labor, and they couldn't find the doctor, so my grandmother had to deliver me right there. So I came into the world with 2 strong women, my mom and my grandmother, and they encouraged me my whole life to live and do what you want to do. Don't be in a box where you think you have to do things according to whatever the norm is. You know, chase your dreams, get an education. That was big on my mom's list of things for me to do. So in high school, she didn't let me take home ec or any of the things that girls did. I had to take biology and stuff that would get me in college or be good on a transcript.
That's amazing. And so you said your grandmother delivered you.
Mm-hmm.
And tell everybody about your grandmother's experience. Because she delivered your mother herself, is that correct?
My great-grandmother.
Your great-grandmother.
Was young as well. Her husband worked for the railroad. So she was at home alone, and then the neighbors were not just right next door, like now. So she felt some unfamiliar pain. This was her first child. And so she finally realized she was in labor, but there was nothing she could do. She couldn't go find a neighbor. And so she just delivered her baby herself, which happened to be my grandmother. And eventually somebody came and knocked on the door to check on her, and they ran and got her husband, but by then she had my grandmother all wrapped up in a blanket and in a little market basket sitting by the fire. She weighed like 4 pounds. They had these scales for vegetables, and they laid her in the scale and weighed her out. And she lived to be 99 years old.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and she voted. She was the oldest voter in the county where we lived. And they don't let you go into the booth. You can escort an elderly or a handicapped person to the booth. And I was always in there trying to tell her who to vote for. She was very independent, and they were like, no, you have to stay behind the curtain. But yeah, they did an article in our hometown paper about her, and she, back in those days, women kind of, sort of did whatever their husbands thought was the right candidate. You know, they kind of would, well, for a while they couldn't even vote, so let's just go there. So she had some ideas that came from her father, which, you know, was like 70 years previously. And I would always argue with her about what should happen today and all that stuff. And for my whole life, I was close to her and wrote a little bit of her story, wrote a little book about her birth, how she came into the world, and the hands of her own mom. How cool is that?
That is so cool. You come from a long line of strong women, and you said,
Yeah.
you know, you said that women would kind of do whatever the men, and I think guys now we have that completely reversed. Is that correct? Because I believe we do whatever y'all want us to do, and I'm okay with it. Because it's the right decision 99.999% of the time.
You know what they say, happy wife, happy life.
Yes, ma'am, you're right. That's right.
So yesterday, my son, I hope you'll get to meet him. He's came with me, and he's at the merchandise table. And yesterday he says, go shopping with me, and he wanted to get some things for his wife. So we were in and out of all these fancy stores, and I'm barely keeping up. But yeah, happy wife, happy life.
That is the truth. That is the truth. So tell everybody about moving to Forest Park when you were 10 years old. What prompted y'all to move to that place?
Well, on a personal note, so my dad was in the Marines when I was born, and they wouldn't let him out, so he kind of snuck out and hitchhiked home so he could be there for my birth. Then when he got back, he got in trouble and he had to do KP, like peel potatoes, for a few weeks. But then he finally got out, and my mom moved in with my grandmother because she didn't want to live alone while he was gone. And so when he got out, he got us a little farmhouse in a town called Griffin, Georgia. He was from around Forsyth, and they were both around the South Georgia area. He got us a little farm, and it was like way out with a lot of acres. And my mom couldn't drive. She didn't know how to drive a car at that point. And she had another child, and then there were 4. And my dad was going through some stuff. He worked, I think, at a freight line back in that day. And on Fridays, when he got off, he would be a little mischievous and not come home till late and stuff like that. So one night, my mom said, I'm leaving. She got us, put us in the car. We're like, you don't even know how to drive. She starts driving down the road, just like screaming, and my dad runs out in front of the car and says, please stop. I promise I won't ever drink again. And she said, okay, and he said, all right, and that was that. So then he moved us out of the little farmhouse, which didn't have a bathroom or anything either, and had a little outhouse and a ringer-type washer, and, very farmish, or back in that time. So she wanted to move to the city, and she wanted a phone and, some of the running water, some of the kind of like...
The luxuries of
life.
The
luxuries of life, yeah. She mainly wanted company. She's a very social person, and she travels with me sometimes. She's 88, drives her own car. It gets all the attention wherever we go. And, I have another story about her later, too, but he moved her to Forest Park, Georgia, and got her a 3-bedroom brick home. That was a big deal. 1 bathroom. And then we had another child. So there were 5 kids and parents in this house, and we thought it was big. I mean, we were like high cotton. She got her a phone with a cord that stretched from one end of the house to the other. You remember those little twirly? And she was on that phone all the time. You know, washing dishes, running a load of laundry, and screaming at kids, chasing us around with a fly swatter. But she ran a tight ship and got those kids raised, and we all kind of went a little bit wild for a while, but then one by one, we kind of settled back into how we were raised, you know, to be honest, faithful, hardworking people, give back to society and not to just be takers. So
It's beautiful. And you graduated from Forest
Park High School.
And then you went on to go to Georgia State University.
Correct.
Is that correct? And then after that, after going to Georgia State University, you started an incredible job career with the Atlanta Falcons. How cool is that? So tell everybody about what you were doing with the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, growing up, I wanted to be an actress, stage, screen, whatever. And then, small town Georgia, how are you going to get there? I mean, how does this even happen? And there's all these stories about somebody in a drugstore and they get discovered. You know, I thought, oh, maybe if I'm in pageants, somebody in the audience will be somebody who could discover me. To do what, you know? So pageants actually became my job. I entered a lot of stuff and won small things, and then finally won the Miss Georgia pageant. But the Atlanta Falcons came right after high school. My senior year, I got an invitation to try out to be a cheerleader. And I'd been a cheerleader in high school. My whole life, I just was a cheerleader. I wasn't very good at basketball, and the things for the girls were a little bit limited then, so I could cheer. So that's what I did. And then I tried out for the Atlanta Falcons, and I made that team and stayed there for 4 seasons. And after that was when I entered the Miss Georgia pageant, the second time. The first time I got first runner-up, and then the second time I finally got the title and the money that went with it.
Yes. So after the Falcons, you become Miss Georgia. And Miss Georgia, that pageant leads you to the destiny of getting to meet and then go on to date the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. This is a very interesting serendipitous story about how you had the chance to stop in Memphis, for this special meeting that was not supposed to take place. You were there on business. Is that correct?
Correct. The year, when you have a pageant title, you have to spend the year traveling or doing appearances on their behalf. And so I had an opportunity to do a copper tone suntan oil ad in Memphis, Tennessee. And then I had another oil that was called Black Gold, and it was a motor oil. So 2 different type of oil people had asked me to come up and make an appearance. So I was in a hotel, and then I had a day off in between. And so when I got up, what do? You go shopping, you know, wherever you are, somewhere new. I had never been to this part of the country before. And so I called a cab and asked him where the nearest mall was, and he told me. And so I hopped in, and on the way there, he was, you know, chatting it up, like, where are you from? And usually the accent causes people to ask, where are you from? Because it's a little bit thick. Not as much as it was, probably. But he said, have you been here before? I said, no. And he said, well, do you know that Elvis lives here? I said, maybe, but I hadn't thought about it, really. He said, we're going to pass his house. I said, oh, okay. And so we got up to the house, and he said, he pulled over off to the side of the road, and he said, would you like to, you know, kind of get out and look around, and then I'll take you to the mall. I said, okay, but all you could do is stand at the gate and look in. I mean, what was there to see, really? So I got out, and was just kind of standing at the gate, looking through it, and there was a lot of people out there. And I hear someone go, "Hey, hey." And you know you don't want to look because they might say, "Not you, her." So, you know, out of the corner of my eye, I'm kind of looking to see who they're beckoning. And when he caught my eye, he motioned for me to come over. There was a man standing just inside the gate. So I walked over and he said, "So what's your name?" I said, "Diana." And he said, "Are you from Memphis?" And I said, "No, I live in Atlanta." And he said, "So what brings you here?" I bragged about the Miss Georgia, you know, I fluffed it up to him. And he said, "Well, my name is Elvis Presley." And I thought, oh, a relative. And he said, "Yeah, I'm Elvis's uncle." And I thought, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. He said, "Would you like to come in?" And I thought, yeah, I guess. Turned around, you know, told the cab, "Bye." I'm shopping here. So he said, "I'm going to open the gate just a little, and you have to hurry and squeeze yourself in because all these other people will push the gate open. So they can't know this is going to happen." I said, "Okay." So I stood right by the edge, and as soon as it opened, I squeezed in, and he closed it back really quick. And so then I'm standing there going, well, what's next, you know? And so he talked to me a few more minutes, and then a golf cart, I see it coming down from the house. There were two guys in there, and they came up to me and they said, "Hey, do you want to see the house?" And I said, "Well, is Elvis home?" And they said, "No." And I thought, does he not mind you invite strangers up in here and he's not here? And they said, "Oh, it's fine." I thought, well, I guess it's safe enough. I mean, we're in the gate and these guys obviously have access to the house. So I said, sure. So I hopped in the golf cart and they drove up to the house, around to the back door, and we got out and they showed me all around, and the jungle room, the kitchen, the music room, all the places. I met some of the cooks that were there, and there were people all over. I don't know who they were, some bodyguards, and Lisa Marie was in there riding her tricycle around the house, and I guess she was like 5 or 7 then, little, just carefree, beautiful, sweet child on a tricycle, you know, bumping into any piece of furniture she pleased, you know, and I'm thinking, this kid got it made in here. And so then we get to the staircase, and it has a little, like a draped rope across it. And I said, "Are we going up there?" And they said, "No, Elvis is taking a nap." So everything changes now that I know he's in the house. Because before, I was just touring his home, but now I find out, and they said, "We're not sure if he'll come down or not, but you're welcome to sit and talk and hang out for a while." So they took me to the jungle room, introduced me to a couple more guys, and I just sat, talked to Lisa Marie some, and just kind of chilled and watched people come and go, people knock on the door, come in, ask for Elvis, you know, friends of his that came in and out, that he knew, policemen. So finally, one of the bodyguards came and said, "Would you like for me to give you a ride back to your hotel? Because obviously it's too late to go shopping where I was headed." And I said, "Sure, if you don't mind." So on the way to the hotel, he said, "Elvis wants to know if you want to go to the movies with us tonight." And I said, "Well, I didn't see Elvis. How does he even know I'm somewhere to be seen?" And he goes, "Well, he just told me to ask you." And I said, "Well, sure." He said, "I'll pick you up at 11, and Elvis is renting the theater, and we'll watch a couple of movies, and then we'll bring you home." And I said, "Okay." So sure enough, 11 o'clock, he picked me up, and we went back to Graceland, and he said, "Just wait here till Elvis comes out." And so I'm sitting in the car, and then this door just, like, Elvis doesn't just come in a room. He makes an entry. And I don't even think he tries. I think that's just him. He's just got this whole charisma, this swag, they call it this, you know. He just stepped out onto the little patio, and I just froze. I mean, he had on this suit, like a light blue and a baby blue a dark blue, baby blue, with bell bottoms and black boots. Had on his sunglasses and a light blue shirt under it with the collar just really high. I thought, what a vision. I mean, this man is, I'm going to go to the movies with him. So he starts walking towards the car, and then he stops and says hello, and glad you could come. I expected him to tell me to scoot over. Well, he walked around the back of the car, and I thought, well, maybe he's going to drive. And then he gets in another car. I thought, what kind of date is this anyway? Is this a date? Or was the bodyguard just like making it up? I don't know. But I said, okay, well, so the bodyguard gets back in the car with me, and then we drive away. We follow Elvis, and then all the way to the theater, we ride side by side. And Elvis would lean in and wave to me over there, and I'm like, this is very strange. This is like my parents, we double dated. They'd be in one car, you'd be in the other. So eventually we got to the theater, and Elvis parked and went in, and there was a lot of other people, probably 30 people that came, and friends and bodyguards and their friends and stuff like that. So the guard opens the door for me, and he says, I need to talk to you first. So, you don't have a camera on you, right? I said, no, fresh out. And we didn't have any cell phones back then. Oh gosh, if we did, I'd have so many good selfies. I didn't even have, what was it, a Brownie? A little Kodak Brownie camera that used to carry around? He said, so, and don't grab at him. Don't lunge. Don't, just start talking to him. And I thought, so why am I here? I'm very confused. But I am a complete stranger. That Uncle Vester just plucked me out off the sidewalk, and Elvis invited. I thought, I kind of get this. There was no Facebook to check me out, no internet, so he did do some checking. I don't really know how, but later on he told me these facts about my family that he could not have known unless somehow I guess he made it a point to figure it out. But the guy said, yeah, we don't know you, so we don't know what you're going to do when you get around him. I said, I promise I'm not going to do nothing. I'm so scared right now, I'm just going to sit there and watch the movie. So we went in, and Elvis was in, I forget which row, it was close to the front though, and they put me behind him at an angle, like he was in front of me here and I'm behind him here. I thought, this just gets stranger and stranger. But I finally figured out I was definitely not going to be Elvis's date for that night, because I don't know if this was just like a pre-date kind of checkout thing. I don't know. But he would turn around and talk to me all through the movies. There was one movie that's kind of like a sci-fi, and there was some weird things going on, and he turned around, he patted my knee, he said, it's just pretend, it's just pretend. Or during Peter Sellers, he would turn around to see if I was laughing in all the right parts. Very attentive, considering we were sitting on separate rows.
And the two movies were Pink Panther, Peter Sellers.
Uh-huh.
And the second movie was 2001,
Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
And there was 3 movies that night.
The third one, I can't remember what it was. It was the last one, and by then, I don't know, my memory just fails me. But
you're probably
I was looking in the back of his head all the time.
Elvis was the story, for sure.
And he had his arm draped over the seat, and so I could look at his arm, his hand. He had a little black place on his finger where he had mashed it. I mean, just drinking him in. You just want to memorize in case that's the last time you see him, or the only way that you see him, because I was still very much in the dark about what the deal was. And I was a little reserved. I didn't want to just start asking a bunch of questions or making demands. I just was going to go with the flow, see what happened. So the next morning, after 3 movies, it's probably 8 o'clock in the morning or something. It's daylight. So the bodyguard says, I will take you back to your hotel. So we all stand up. Elvis turns around. He takes my hand. He said, I'm so glad you got to come. It was really nice meeting you. And I hear you were Miss Georgia. I said, yeah. I was trying to, something to impress. other than Forest Park, Georgia, which is a great town. But it was not like on the map very big back then. So anything I could say that might prompt a memory for him to distinguish me from whoever else might enter his life at some point. Excuse me. So we go get in the car, and I'm thinking, this is very surreal. I mean, I've had a great time, but I'm so confused. And I was left longing. You know, I thought some kind of magic was gonna happen. So the bodyguard said, "You want to stop for coffee?" And I didn't drink coffee back then, and had that natural energy going on. I was young. I was 24, I think. And I said, "Well, I don't really drink coffee, but sure, that'll be fine." And then he, after we got served, he pulled out a paper and a pen, and he said, "Elvis would like your phone number and your address." I thought, okay, I think it's you. Because Elvis has not, he was with me like 8 hours. He could have passed me this piece of paper, but he didn't. And he goes, "Well, he asked me to get it." And I just looked at him like, I'm not sure I believe you, but you know what? I'm going to take the gamble, because you can always hang up if it's not who you think is calling. Not that this guy wasn't nice. He was. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to cast any like shadow of negativity on him. He was just part of the happening, you know. So I wrote down all my information and slid the paper to him, and he took me to my hotel. And then the next day I worked, and then I flew home. And I'm walking around the airport thinking, doesn't anybody know that I was with Elvis? I mean, don't I have a look? Like a glow or some sort of a like aura around me? I've been in the presence of this earthly king here, you know. And nobody said anything. I didn't get a chance to even brag about it to anybody. So I got on the airplane, flew home. Our tradition was my brother, my second to youngest, would always pick us up at the airport if we went anywhere, which was rare. You didn't fly a lot back then. It just was not, I don't know, we didn't go very far anywhere that you couldn't take a car with 5 kids, you know. So my brother always picked me up, and so on this day I called him like, "Yeah, I'll be here." So he pulls up. He always liked to pull pranks. So he pulls up in his big blue step van that is his work van. He had a home improvement company. And it only had one seat, the driver's seat. The passenger had to sit on a paint bucket. So he picks me up in this get-up, knowing I've just been with Elvis. I mean, how much of a letdown is that? I thought, well, I was a princess, and now I'm back in the pumpkin in this van right now. It didn't have any doors either. Just, you know the old bread trucks? That's what it was. He just painted it blue and wrote his name on the side. But he thought that was the funniest thing, just to burst my bubble right there. I told him I'd been with Elvis, kinda. He didn't believe me. I got home, told my mom, my sisters, everybody that would listen, that I'd been with Elvis. And they're like, "Yeah, right. Just whatever." So, and I kind of sat by the phone. We had this wall phone, and I sat near it for a couple of weeks because Elvis was going to call. I thought that guy probably lost my phone number, or he just was, it's a cruel joke. I didn't know what was going on. So I had said earlier I wanted to be in show business. And so I had a friend who was in California, and she had been working out there, and she said, "Why don't you come out, spend a few days with me, and we can go around and see maybe if you could get a job and a place to live." And I said, "Sure, that'd be great." So I decided I was going to do that. Elvis was never going to call, so I was going to go on with my life. So I flew to California, and she set me up in a house, and I started looking at the casting call, the Hollywood Reporter, different circulars like that you can get in the store looking for jobs. And the more I looked, the more I realized it was not going to be as easy as she made it sound. LA was huge. Hollywood, I didn't know where to go, who to see. And I saw a lot of extra work, which back then I think paid $30 a day, which I guess it's all relative. Everything was a little less expensive, but it was not going to be much of a living. And then I started to look at how much housing cost. And then I just went out and saw the town, went to restaurants, and my friend introduced me to people who took me to places to see and do and stuff like that. So this one day, I was laying out by the pool at the house where I was, and the housekeeper came out. Well, no, first I asked if I could use the phone out by the pool. And so I called home and just to check in with my mom, tell her I was and all that kind of stuff. And so she said, "You've been getting a lot of prank phone calls." And I said, "Oh, yeah? From who?" She goes, "I don't know. He says his name is Elvis." My mom hung up on Elvis twice, 2 times. Then he called again. This man, he must have thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, who calls again after? But I think it was more the pursuit, you know, like I don't know what it was, but I was just glad of it. So he called one more time, and my little sister answered the phone, and she said, "Is your refrigerator running? Oh, well, you better go catch it." So she was just going to prank him back. Hung up the phone. So I said, "Mama, I told you I met Elvis, and that's really him." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm positive. I gave him my phone number." And I said, "If he ever calls again, please give him my number." She said, "Well, isn't he too old for you?" I'm like, "No." He was a year younger than my mom because she was young when I was born. So in her mind, I was going out with somebody her age or close to it, and she had grown up liking Elvis. And so my aunts and uncles, they all loved Elvis. When I was young, they would take me to the movies to see a movie with him because their kids were all young. I was the oldest of all the nieces. And they tried to introduce me to him. Sorry. They tried to raise me up on Elvis music. So I had record albums from my uncle. So anyway, they associated him being their age instead of someone that my age could take. Anyway, I finally convinced her. And I promise you, within 5 minutes, the phone rang at the swimming pool where I was. And the housekeeper came and got me and said I had a phone call. And this voice said, "Hey, is this Diana?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is Joe Esposito. Elvis wants to talk to you." And then I hear, "Hey, baby, this is Elvis." And I thought, it's really Elvis. And then he starts going into this, "Why are you in California?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to work, trying to feed myself one day." And he said, "But I told you I was going to call." I said, 2 weeks ago. He goes, "I'm sorry, I had a lot to do, getting ready to go out of town and things like that." I said, "I'm sorry. If I'd known, I would have stayed home 3 more days." He said, "That's okay. Would you like to come to New York with me?" And I said, "Yeah. Yeah. But I'm in LA." And he said, "That's okay. I'm going to get you a flight. Could you be ready in a couple of hours because of the time change? I want to try to get you in time to go to the show." And I said, "Okay." So the phone rings in about 10 minutes, and he said, "I'm having trouble finding a flight that will get you here in time for the show. Can you be ready in an hour?" And I said, "Yeah," wondering how, because I'm outside with baby oil and iodine all over me. I had more hair than I do right now, thicker, longer. I thought, how could I be, I won't even worry about it. So I hung up the phone, he called back again, and he said, "I can't find you a flight." And I just wanted to cry, and he said, "So I'm just going to get my Learjet to pick you up and bring you out here." I thought, that works for me.
Well, okay, so we're at this pivotal moment now, and this is Elvis time we're talking about now. We always say, you know, Elvis operated on his own time, Elvis time. 1 hour is, in Elvis's world, that's pretty normal. He's like, can you be ready in an hour? It's pretty incredible. So what's going through your mind? You're 24 years old at this time. What's going through your mind whenever that phone call hangs up and you got to be ready to get on that jet in 1 hour from now to go and spend some time with Elvis?
Well, and the truth is, how many hours does it take to get ready for Elvis? I mean, there's not enough hours in the day. So I just, when he told me the details, he said, my chauffeur will pick you up in 30 minutes. And then I just about cried. I thought, there is no way. But then I remembered, I'm going to be on the airplane by myself. I can do from here up. And so I ran to the bathroom, put my hair in hot curlers, got a shower really fast. Oh, and something else he said on the phone was, don't worry about packing. I'll get you whatever you need when you get here. But I thought, I'm not going to go over there and just spend time shopping. I'm going to be with him. You know, so I just started grabbing my stuff. I just wadded up in the suitcase. In one suitcase, the zipper started to break. I had to put some masking tape on it. I thought, this is going to look good when he gets my luggage. I'm just going to look like the queen I am. And so I crammed everything, and I put on some jeans and this little peasant shirt I had and these gigantic platform shoes that just wear everywhere. I don't know how we wore heels back then that long. It's wearing them's okay. It's standing up in them that's hard. I'm seated. So just as I was getting my shoes on, zipping the last case, the doorbell rang, and the housekeeper came to my room and knocked on the door and just gestured to the door. And there was this tall man in a gray suit, like a tuxedo type suit and a gray hat. And he said, are you Diana? I said, yeah. He said, I'm here to take you to the airport. And he just kind of looked me up and down, and I'm sure he was thinking, boy, Elvis really getting desperate here. Because I got all these curlers and no makeup on and my little peasant blouse. And so he gets all of my mismatched, taped up luggage. I figured he'd probably put it on top of the airplane. And he loads me up in the limousine. And we drive away through Beverly Hills and the area that I was staying in. And I was just looking out the window thinking, wow, I'm about to be on an adventure and have no idea where I'm going or what we're going to do. New York is big. I didn't have a clue, and I didn't even ask. I was just so caught up in the moment. But I never once felt scared or anything. Never at all had a forethought of, what am I getting myself into? Nothing. Just carefree and threw abandon to the wind, and got me to the airplane, loaded all my gear, put me inside. There was a pilot and a co-pilot and me, and I had my little choo-choo bag, is what we called it. Anybody remember those? It's like a little square makeup bag with a handle. And I didn't have much makeup back then. I was kind of not a hippie, but a little bit of a boho type look. So had some Bonnie Bell, and you know, anybody remember that? Yeah. And you put that on your cheeks and your lips. Gave you all you need. A little mascara. But anyway, I opened that bag. I started putting the stuff on, and then read some magazines, and they brought me some peanuts and a Tab. Remember Tab?
Tab Cola, absolutely.
And they didn't really have any food because they didn't have much advanced notice, Elvis time. And so after a few hours, I decided to take my hair down and style it all. And I didn't use hardly any hairspray back then. I didn't have any. And I reapplied everything I had put on earlier, and thought it was going to be as good as it was going to get there. And then time went on, and I could feel my hair just kind of getting limp, and so I put on some more makeup again. I just kept layering and layering. My lashes were out to here by that time. And I was just so excited. I mean, my stomach was in knots. First I was on a Learjet. That was pretty cool. And then I was about to meet Elvis Presley, as I thought it was going to be a real date. Not like the movie date or the house date, any of those other things. So it started to get dark, and the pilot, or the co-pilot, came back and he said, we're not going to make it in time to meet Elvis at the original location, so you're going to miss the show. Oh, I was brokenhearted. And I said, but was that all? Was I going to come back home after that? What's next? He said, well, he asked us when we land to take you and put you on his other airplane and wait for him there. I've been flying, 5 hours? I don't know, 4. Time flies, literally. But I was just felt limp again, disheartened. So we land, and a couple of the Stanley brothers met the airplane, and they said Elvis is on his way, and they got my luggage. I'll never forget this. I loved the Stanley boys, and I stayed friends with Rick until he passed away just a couple years ago, maybe. He came to my church to preach all the time. I got to know his wife, his girls. Miss him a lot. And Billy, but Elvis made them get my luggage, and they were so mad. They would argue about, we're not bellmen, we're Elvis's bodyguard, we're his brothers. But they would fight constantly over who was going to have to lug my bags wherever they were going to go. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. I teased Rick about it over the years, especially in the way they looked, after being lugged around and crammed and taped up. So they got me on the next airplane, and it was not the Lisa Marie. I had already bought that plane, but it was not ready. So this was the one he was using before that. I can't remember what it was. Do you? But it was had been redone on the inside. It was like a living room and very comfortable, and nothing like the airplanes you see now. It was all changed. So they showed me in, and I took a bench, there was this table that had 2 bench seats. I sat down on one of those, and the flight attendant asked me if I wanted anything to eat or drink, or I said, sure, what do you have to drink? And they had Shasta. That's what Elvis liked, Shasta. And I said, I'll take a Diet Shasta. And they brought that to me, and I just sat at the table and waited, and I could hear all this commotion, and cars and sirens, and just you could feel commotion, a bunch of cars rushing, and this limo drove right up to the airplane. We were on the tarmac, and then another car drove up, and people started getting out, rushing around, and then when the cars lit the area, and I could see people just all standing all around. There's a fence there, but there were people everywhere. I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't even see those people. They're all lined up to watch him leave. And so I'm watching out the window, people get out of cars, and finally I see this blur of somebody with a cape and black hair, and they disappear, and then I see them come to the top of the stairs and just literally fly into this curtained off area that was in the front of the airplane. And I said, I think that was Elvis. His outfit looked like Elvis. And the collar was high. You couldn't really see his face, but you could see everything else. And the curtain closed. And then the pilot said, everybody prepare for takeoff. Put on your seatbelts and all that. And I'm like, he's in that curtain up back here. I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I just sat patiently, no complaining, no anything. And we flew, I don't know how long, but the pilot finally said, we're approaching wherever we were approaching. Make sure your seatbelts are fastened and prepare for landing. Well, at that point, the curtain opened, and Elvis stepped out of the curtain, and he had changed. He was in more comfortable attire. And apparently, you know, he goes in there to freshen up and take off his shirt. Because when he leaves the building, when they say Elvis, he has left the building. I learned of that, and it's a mad rush to the car. So he usually waits and changes when we get back to the hotel. But he came, and he's walking towards me, and I'm like, I wonder where he's going to sit. Over there, or with who? You know, at this point, it's only been a matter of hours, but the weeks, the build-up, the anticipation of where is this going to take me? And you know, at one time I looked around, I thought, how did I even get here? I mean, how did I take a cab, get out at Graceland, go in, go to the movies, and now I'm on a flight that Elvis has arranged? How did this all happen? You know, because I didn't set out that day to find Elvis or to find anybody, a pair of shoes maybe, go shopping. But it just became very surreal how, you know, going about my daily life, and then this comes to me from a side. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to go with it. Let's just see where this goes. So he continues to walk towards me, and we lock eyes. I thought I was going to pass out at that point because it's getting real. And he comes all the way to where I am, and he steps over me and sits on the inside seat next to the wall of the plane, and immediately starts apologizing for the delay and the fact that I missed the show. And here's what I didn't really learn, I didn't understand until this moment, is the show I was going to was his show. I'd never seen Elvis in concert before. And I was going to be there with him on this night, and I missed it. And he apologized for all I had to go through, and I thought, he's so nice. It's okay. I didn't mind as long as the end, as long as we get to where we are now, all is good. And he apologized for not having food, and he took my hand. I wore a lot of turquoise jewelry back then. I had turquoise on every finger, and he started rolling it around and saying, you like turquoise, huh? I do too. And so then we just started to talk. He told me he liked my hair. He didn't really like blue jeans. I lived in denim, you know, hip hugger bell bottoms. But he said it was kind of a reminder of his childhood when that's all they had. And he really didn't, you know, have an appreciation for that right now, and would like for me to wear something different. But he said, I understand you didn't have much notice, and so, you know, don't worry about anything. I'll get you what you need. I said, oh, I brought it all. I wasn't about to come out here and hang out in some department store buying stuff. And he's like, okay. And so we flew, and then got to the next wherever we went. Got out, there was a limo waiting on the tarmac, and we zoomed off. And at that point I said, oh, where are we going? Because I hadn't thought at that point what was next. And I started thinking, well, what is next? And he said, we're going to the hotel. And then I started really thinking, oh. And, you know, my mom would have said, you should have thought about that earlier. Well, no, I'm thinking moment to moment, you know. But Elvis's time is so different. So we go to the back entrance of the Hilton, and we're going up, and at the top floor there is a grouping of suites that apparently he stays in whenever he's in this particular town. And so he walks me, we go to the door and open the door, and he said, this is your room. And he said, I love the statement by him. I don't know if anybody believes it or not, but he said, I am not a make-out artist, and I want you to be comfortable. Whatever happens between us will be your call. But I want you to have your privacy. This is your room. And I like to have my privacy when I travel. You know, he colors his hair like I did, and we had things we didn't want to see each other do. And plus, I'm a total stranger still. So this beautiful room, pale yellow with it's like a princess room, you know, a big bed with posters, and on it was filled with boxes with yellow ribbons all over them. He said, I bought a few things for you to start with because I didn't know what you would bring, and you don't know my lifestyle. You know, you don't know how I live on the road, so I wanted you to be comfortable. So there were things to wear in every box, mostly things to wear when you're lounging, because it's a Grand Central. You know, you might want to not want to be dressed in your street clothes, but you're going to want to be comfortable. And so with things that you could wear in front of people. Very thoughtful, modest, and just, I mean, who thinks that deeply for you, or that forward thinking? You know, who thinks like that? He does. And I was just so grateful that, you know, he provided that for me. And then he showed me to the next room, which is like a living room, little kitchen kind of thing. And in the next room was his suite, his room, which was big. It had, you know, the bed, a sofa, table, more like a suite than a room. And he said, why don't you freshen up and then we'll have dinner? I said, okay. So went back over to my room and changed into one of the outfits he had provided for me. And then I heard a knock on the door, and it was him, and he said, are you ready for dinner? I said, sure. And so he walked me back over, and then he said, I didn't know what you might want, so I just ordered one of everything on the menu, and here it is, take your pick. So literally, there were carts of food with those silver dome things on them. Simple food, you know, he said, this is what I'm going to have unless you want it. It was a hamburger steak. It had mashed potatoes, smothered onions, and he had sweet tea and milk. Just, you know, I guess I thought there might be some kind of lobster under there or something. But he was a very down-to-earth kind of person. I'm not saying he didn't like that, but that's not the kind of thing he pursued. He liked familiar, home-style food, and kind of a little bit lifestyle like that.
The comfort food of the South. And I think he knew that you, being from Atlanta, Georgia area, would understand that and appreciate that. You guys would probably share a lot of those things. What did you end up picking? Do you know?
He picked the hamburger steak, and I picked a plain hamburger with fries. Because I don't know how many hours that I hadn't eaten, but I wasn't even hungry. I was so nervous. I mean, the butterflies were just crazy in my stomach, and I thought, I don't even care if I don't eat. I'll just watch you. I just picked at some fries, and he said, are you not hungry? And I said, yeah, I'm just a little nervous from all day and everything like that. So, but he ate heartily. You know, he wasn't like intimidated by me being there or worried about what I thought. And he had worked. You know, he had sang his booty off, so he was hungry, and there was no alcohol, no. He had occasionally a little thin cigar type, and he really didn't even inhale. But I know that's a statement right now that refers back to something else. But he would light it and kind of hold it sometime. I didn't like cigarette smoke at all. Didn't usually date anyone who smoked. But he really didn't smoke. Sometimes it would, I think there's a picture of us in the car, and he's holding one of them. And it would just be like the ashes would be, it was not, I don't know what it was. Maybe he just had a habit of holding it, but it was a rare occasion. So we had dinner, and then we went over to the sofa and sat down, and he said, I have a present for you. And I said, I know, I've just been over there opening all of them. He said, no, I have another present for you that I picked out, that I designed. Lowell Hayes made it. And he said, I wanted you to have it. So he went and got this little black box and brought it out. And in it was this diamond and sapphire ring. So that was, and he put it on my finger. I said, how do you know what size I wear? He said, oh, I know a lot about you. And I thought, okay, works for me. How, I don't know. There's no internet. And so I looked at it and I said, is this real? I mean, who gives you on your first kind of real date? He goes, what do you mean, is this real? Do you think I would give you a fake diamond? He just went off. I said, I am not trying to insult you, but I have never even seen anything like this, much less had someone gift me with anything like this. So I'm sorry, I just couldn't believe it. Still can't. And he said, yes, it's real. And so it's real.
It's beautiful.
I brought it with me.
Is the production team up there where we can zoom in on the ring? Are y'all up there? Let's see if we can do it. There you go. Just hold that up, Miss Diana. There you go. That's as close as we can get. Look at that sparkle, y'all. Isn't that beautiful? There you go.
I feel like Vanna White.
Sapphire and diamond ring that Elvis gave her, that was designed by Elvis and made by Mr. Lowell Hayes. How
so
beautiful
pretty.
is that? I had a chance to look at that backstage, and it just absolutely gorgeous. And this one here.
The next night, he gave me this one. It's Australian fire opal
Oh, wow.
with, it's a deeper gold, a really dark,
There you go.
I
Zoom
don't
in
know
on
what you
that,
call
guys. There you go. Can y'all get in tight on that as well? Let's see.
where am I?
Oh, they're working
this is
on it.
right.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
And it has diamonds on each of the edge of the opal,
Oh, there you
set in gold.
go. Wow. That shows you how generous Elvis Presley was. He was just a giving soul.
Yes.
And I know you saw that firsthand.
Yeah, he was just like a gift a minute almost.
A gift a minute.
I was spoiled, very spoiled, and still living in that surreal, like when is this bubble gonna burst, or what's gonna happen next? And then I try not to think about that. Stuff did happen. Not all good, not all about me, but you know, stuff in his life and with the people around him.
Yeah.
Things happen, but
What a gentleman as well, too. You know, this. I love that. I love the statement that you said. I'm not a makeout artist. It's very true to Elvis. You know, he was so aware of himself. He knew, and he was such a gentleman to offer what wasn't any assumptions made on that. And that's the true character of him.
yes, and there's, you know, lots of rumors about him. I mean, he was a young man. Of course, there's going to be lots of girlfriends and things like that. But later, he was a lot more settled when I met him, and he loved the companionship of a woman. And it was more than just the physical aspect. He just liked the company of a woman. He liked to talk. He liked the smell. You know, we're different than men. And he always had his guys around, but he liked having that one female. And it might not be forever. It might be for a week, a year, or whatever fits into his plan, kind of, because life changes. But it was 1975, and he passed away in 77. So he was definitely less wild, or you'd say. He was a little more, not even sedate, just a little more settled, and I liked that part of him. I felt like I was captive, you know, from the time you're with him. He's not out chasing somebody else.
Sure. And how did your relationship with him develop after that first evening? You felt comfortable. You felt. Did you start settling in and starting to see the human being side of Elvis at that point? Because you, of course, had known the public persona of Elvis Presley, but getting to meet him and actually see him, you know, have dinner with you and talk and that sort of thing. Tell me about how it progressed where you started seeing him as the man, Elvis.
Well, fortunately, I'm kind of glad I missed that first show, because it did give me a chance to get to know him a little bit before I saw him on stage, because that can get very confusing. You know, everybody loves Elvis on stage. I mean, what's not to? But to confuse that with the man, or not be able to get to know the other dimension of him, which there are many, So I'm kind of grateful for that first night because we just had it all to ourselves. You know, stay up half the night talking, and then the next night he had a show. So I was going to get to go to the show with him and come home with him, which that's pretty cool, I have to say. So when I saw him in the show, well, I'm seated, like off to the side of the stage, there was one seat on like a little pedestal thing. Not really a pedestal, but a one chair situation, and that's where I sat. And you know, the music starts, and then here he comes out on the stage, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is him. And then he just completely transforms from like a low-key kind of person till he gets on stage, and then he turns into this Dean Z kind of person. You see how he is right now, right? He's conversational and very just chill. And then you see him up here and you're like,
I got ants in my pants. No, that is so extremely kind of you, but I'm not even in the same universe or stratosphere of that sort of creative genius that Elvis Presley was.
I don't know. My son was, on Friday night we got in late, so we had to catch the tail end. And we were sitting up here, and my son said, from here, it is very uncanny. The moves and the look, and obviously he has spent a lot of time studying his craft. And so yeah, pretty intense to watch you up here on stage.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
That makes your heart race.
That's too sweet of you. Thank you.
Especially all these ladies lined up here getting kisses.
I was looking for you down there as well. So you see Elvis on stage, and he comes out, and he's this larger-than-life presence.
Truly.
You see the show, you experience the music. What is it like after the show for you? What is Elvis exhausted? Does he turn right back into a human, or does it take him time to come down from that euphoric feeling of being on stage?
Well, before they took me out to my seat, well, he changes at the event center, and then he said the guys are going to escort you to your seat. And they're going to come and get you a few minutes before the show ends, because we only have a few minutes to get out before we can't get out, because he'll be mobbed, you know. And he said, just stay alert. Don't go anywhere. Just make sure that we leave you so we can pick you up. And he said, you know, I worry about people in my company that they could get kidnapped and hold you for ransom. You know, things like that never occurred to me. And I mean, it's happened over time with famous people, but I never thought about it that way. And their routine and their well thought out plan for his escape is, if there's a crack in that anywhere, it all falls apart. And so, sure enough, in the last song before they did the Elvis Has Left the Building thing, I feel a tap on my shoulder, and it was Ricky Stanley. He said, we got to go. He pulls me out of the chair. We race across the front and out the door and wait for Elvis at the exit door. And when they say he has left the building, I see him coming, and the car is there, and literally they just almost picked me up, threw me in the car, and two of them jumped in, and we left. And then there was this mob of people that had gotten into I think it was a tunnel that we were coming out of, and he took my head and pushed me down and laid over me, and I'm like, what is going on here? So then when we get out, he said, I'm sorry, but sometimes we're afraid of them breaking the glass when it presses in so hard. And he said, why do you think I wear these sunglasses all the time? It's not just for looks, it's to protect my eyes. People grab at you, and but they were so close to the car, and you know, the pressure can cause the window to break. So he was protective, very. just, it was like with everything that happened, it made you feel more and more secure and more crazy about this human being that you had the austere, surreal pleasure to be with. And then again, you think, how did I get here again? I mean, how did this all come about? So on the ride back to the hotel, he's just pouring sweat, exhausted, and I'm just real quiet, you know, trying to figure out what's next. And then he leans over and he said, so what did you think? I'm like, he's asking my opinion? Mine? I mean, and he knew that I'd never seen him in a concert before. But for him to, and you know, women are like this too, but I think men, a lot are like this. They want the words of affirmation from people they care about or people that are in their company. And I was too young to understand all that back then. I just thought, like, why do you care what I think? I mean, I'm just this little girl from nowhere, and you're you. He said, I just want to know what you thought about the show and how you think I did. And again, I just got a lump in my throat because I couldn't find the words. You know, just, oh, it was great. That's not enough. I didn't have all the adjectives or all the descriptive words that if he was in your company, and what would you say? I mean, you can't just scream like we do in the audience. You have to be able to. I just finally said, I'm so sorry, I'm at a loss for words. I just can't even think of the right words to tell you how great I thought it was and how I enjoyed it. And it wasn't because I didn't have anything to say. I just couldn't think of all the goodest things to say. You know, the best, like being on stage with a question in a pageant. You got to think, what are they going to remember the most? Which I need to back up to that in a minute. But anyway, that was this thing. He wanted to know what I thought. If I thought he was terrific, and I did, and I finally was able to say that. And then I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, so I just gave him a big old kiss. Thought, this is how I thought you were. So
you showed him with your a big kiss.
I was hoping that was his language.
Yeah.
Physical touch.
It usually goes pretty far with us guys. We're simple-minded guys. But you're right. Elvis's love language was the gift giving. He was a giver, and to hear that his love language to receive that he loved was words of affirmation goes back to his childhood. Gladys, you know, always looking, and even you can see in the twinkle in his eye. You know, he's always kind of asking him, you know, am I doing okay? In certain parts of when he would look at the Sweet Inspirations, for example. And I love that. Tell us about the pageant question that you wanted to get back to.
So when, as Miss Georgia, I got to go to Niagara Falls, New York, where the Miss USA pageant was being held. And each girl was introduced, and then later they were asked, you know, an on-stage question. And so my question was, if you could meet anybody in the world, who would it be? So you're thinking quick, I've got to say somebody that they'll remember. I can't just say, like, my next door neighbor. It's got to be and make an impact. So I said, Elvis Presley. I got a big round of applause. You know, everybody loved the answer. Well, I think it was probably 3 weeks, and I actually met Elvis Presley. And that was not, I mean, of course, who wouldn't want to meet him? But the next night, we were asked, you know, as the finalists come here, ask another question. And I, again, was asked, and I said Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I thought they would remember that name. And a few months later, maybe a year, when I finally got out to the West Coast, I was an extra in a movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I got to meet him. But it's almost like I'm not kind of a woo-woo kind of person, but I believe words, you can speak life or death. You can speak positivity in your life, and I don't know. I think sometimes that just, maybe there was a forethought of what was to come, but it literally happened.
It's almost like you manifested it in a way, or you called out to the
felt like
universe or to
that.
God to say, you know, bring these people into my life. It's very special. How long were you dating Elvis? I know you were on and off. You'd be going home and working and that sort of thing. So how often were you and Elvis speaking, and how long did that relationship last for you?
Well, after the first 8, 10, 12 dates, whatever it was, you didn't just like go out one night and go home. You would be there for a few days, go home, or, you know, you talk on the phone. And I started to learn. He said, he called, he said, I want to take you to my home in Palm Springs, and I want us to go hang out when I'm not working. So it's just, you know, so you could just get to know me, we could get to know each other and not have the pressure of all the traveling and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, that would be great. And he said, well, I'll call you. I wasn't sure how long that would be. And again, we didn't have internet. I saw things regarding Elvis on the front of movie magazines. That was kind of our only way to know what people were doing that were people like him. And even that you couldn't really believe. You know, there were covers of magazines saying that we were on our honeymoon, we had gotten married. And I loved the thought of that, although it wasn't true. So I didn't know what was going on in his personal life. You know, I found out later there were things he was accomplishing and some changes that he was making, and he verbalized that he wanted a relationship. And, you know, that was going to be me if the stars aligned and our lives. And I believed him, and so I went home, and he called and made sure I got home okay, and sent me a big box of, people throw stuff at him on the stage all the time, and he would box them up and give it to me, like teddy bears. Sometimes he would just toss it off the stage to my lap. And so he sent things like that to my house, and then he had Charlie Hodge communicate with me some, and then you know, I kept waiting for that trip we were going to take, and then I decided that I was going to kind of move forward again. I thought, well, maybe if I go out of town, he'll call. That seems to be the way it is. So there was a movie being filmed in Georgia. It was becoming a pretty popular movie spot, and Burt Reynolds was played a big part in that. And he was doing a movie called Gator in Savannah, Georgia. And that's where my great-grandmother's aunt lived, and my grandmother had been wanting to go see her. So I said, hey, Granny, you want to go to Savannah? I'm going to go figure out how to get in this movie. Because I didn't know where, who to call. I just thought, I'll go. And it's about 4 or 5 hours from my house where I live. So she said, fine, and we got in the car and drove. I took her to my aunt's house, and then I just went on a search to find the movie location. And I asked people, they directed me, and finally I pulled up to this area, and I got out, and I walked over to where people were standing, and somebody came over to me and said, can I help you? I said, well, I'm just trying to figure out how to be in this movie. And he was like, you want to be in this movie? I said, yeah. He said, hold on. So he came back with Burt Reynolds, and Burt's like, so you want to be in my movie? I said, yeah. You got any speaking parts? He's like, no, but I got extra work. And he said, show up tomorrow, whatever time, and I'll put you in my movie. I said, okay. So I did. And I worked, I guess, a couple of weeks there, and then they changed the location to another area, and I went back and worked some more. And then he also let me be in Smokey and the Bandit. So on both of those movies, you work a lot, and you make some money, and you go to the theater with all your friends, and then there you go. All of that footage you thought you were on, it gets edited, and there's your face once. But anyway, Burt Reynolds gave me the first opportunity I ever had to be in front of a camera for acting, which it's when you don't get to talk, you are just acting. You're just moving or doing whatever they tell you to do in a crowd or in a group. And I have a publicity photo, 2 of them, from being in the movie with Burt Reynolds, and they're going to be on my merchandise table out front. Well, someone who will remain nameless. Okay, so after this movie's over, and I'm in the grocery store. And back then we wore curlers to the store. I don't know if you ever did. But we'd roll up our hair, you know, wear it around town, because you got a date that night or church the next day or whatever. So I was in this place called Drug Emporium. I don't know if y'all had one in your town. And I walked by the movie rack and I saw my face. My whole self was on the front of this movie magazine. I just started screaming. Oh my gosh, I was so freaked out. And I bought up a bunch of them, took them home. And then, before long, I saw these 2 pictures out here on a movie magazine with Burt Reynolds. Well, someone who shall remain nameless bought one of those books and took it and showed Elvis that I was seeing someone else.
The photo is you and Burt Reynolds giving each other a hug on the set.
In an embrace. And then the other one is a group shot of some of the girls that were in the movie. And so I called, not long ago, I didn't hear from the house, and so I called up Charlie, and he said, you know, Elvis's health has not been as good. He had been in the hospital, and, you know, meanwhile, I'm kind of out here waiting in the wings, not like sitting and waiting, but I'm at that thought he's going to circle back, you know, when we're either in the same location or whatever he's doing changes. I just held on to that thought that we're going to reunite again. So he was coming to Atlanta, and I'm like, why has he not called me? He knows this is where I live. So I went to, I know where he stays and all that, so I took one of my girlfriends and went to the hotel, to the rehearsal hall where they were going to be. And some of the Memphis Mafia people were in there setting up, you know, some sound for rehearsal. And I walked up to one of them, I said, where's Elvis? And he looked at me and said, he doesn't want to see you. I'm like, well, why? He goes, he saw that magazine of you and Burt Reynolds. He's not going to date anybody who's out seen with other people. I said, that was just a publicity thing, you know. I was just trying to, I'm working, and such as it was. And that was just, I need to talk to him and explain this. It's like, no, he doesn't want to see you, and we're not going to let you, we're not going to tell him you're here, and we're not going to let you at his room. And I finally had, and this was kind of mean. I mean, when I met him coming right out of the pageant scene, I was in the best shape of my life, because they make you, you know, work at, because back then they had a swimsuit version. Now they don't do swimsuit, I guess, in some of the pageants, but we had to be fit. And so this had been a few months later. I'd put on a couple pounds maybe, but still, you know, for the time, I was modeling, and obviously I was still, you know, okay. And when I was turned to walk away, I started crying, and one of them said, and by the way, you put on some weight, haven't you? I'm like, you know, insult to injury. And I thought, I said, why are you being mean to me? Well, you heard Elvis. Like, I didn't. I don't know what to say. And at that point, you don't get to say anything. You know, they were in charge. And, of course, he had his own mind. He could have, had he known, or had I been able to get to him, he could have said, all right, what's your story? Especially after all the trouble he went to bring me into his life. You know, I would have thought I could have an audience. But we had had a conversation previously at length about when he was asking me what I was pursuing, what I wanted to do with my life and all. I told him I wanted to be in acting, and I've done it for years, you know, been into things to try to find that path. And he said, I don't think you should do that. Those people will eat you up and spit you out. You're too nice for show business. And he said, besides that, we wouldn't be able to be together because if your schedule was anything like mine, we would never see each other. And he said, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying if it's going to work with us, you won't be able to do that. And so at that point, I had to think, because he had also not given me any security of, okay, if I sacrifice all that I've wanted and dreamed to be with you, what is, I don't know, not a guarantee and not a, but what do you have to say? How can I trust that I'm not going to see you every month or two, or that we're just going to have these, random rendezvous? That's not the kind of life I want to live in if I'm going to give up everything. But I was so enamored with him, I was willing to give up everything right that second. But then once you're home and you don't see him for a bit, and you're not even sure when you're going to see him again, well, what am I going to do with all this time? I'm out of high school, I'm out of college. I need to work, I need to be productive, and not just sit around and wait. So I think, according to Charlie, he looked at that as I'm going on with my life, regardless of what we had talked about. I made my decision. I really didn't, because that could have been changed. Nothing I was doing was going to take me out longer than a couple of weeks. I had not gotten anything that grand. But I never got a chance to be in front of him again, and I pretty much just resigned myself to, we'll wait and see. I didn't even look at it as we're done, because he didn't tell me that. It came from someone else. And I thought, I'll just wait. I'll just bide my time. I'll do things, and we'll see what happens. And so when I figured that we probably were done was when I saw that he was engaged to Ginger Alden. I thought, oh, I guess that's it. Thanks for telling me. But even then, you still have that hope and that in the back of your mind, because if it happened in a crazy way the first time, it could happen in a crazy way the next time. You just don't know what the future holds. So I thought, everything I do, I'll hold it loosely. I won't do anything that I can't drop at the drop of a hat if he calls. And I'll kind of live life that way. And I had moved back out to California in '77, and I woke up, my sister called me and she said, "Are you watching the news?" I said, "No," and I turned on the news and it said Elvis was gone. So it makes me cry to think about, because there's not like a closure. I mean, that is a forced closure. There's not like a reconciliation or a decision that, we're going to go our separate ways. And yes, there's girls in and out everywhere, and no, I didn't know about everybody because we didn't have the internet. We didn't track each other. And I'm actually friends with several of the girls that he dated.
I want to talk to you about some of that. I was going to ask you about your feelings when you heard that news that Elvis had passed away, and that lack of closure. Did you have any resentment towards the situation as a female dating a man? It's got to be difficult to deal with that. Then not having the closure, of course, the mourning of feeling that your friend, your partner, your boyfriend had passed away. What went through your mind? What went through your heart with those things?
I was crushed, and I was angry at people who will remain nameless for, I felt like they got in the way and sabotaged what we had going on. Maybe that was on purpose, I don't know. Because at some point in time I had said some things that didn't set well with them. I was told to mind my own business, and they knew what they were doing. When I would see things or feel things that might be good or not good for somebody I cared about, I verbalized that. And so in a way, I think that maybe they thought I would be in the way. I was not one to just stay back and never say anything to keep the peace. I mean, I was reserved when I needed to be, but sometimes I just had to say something. And I was kind of put in my place a couple of times. So I think I didn't win any friends when I did that. So maybe that was part of the effort to kind of move this one out kind of thing.
Yeah.
Who knows for sure. But yeah, I was really mad for a long time. And then I believe God is sovereign, and I believe that life is going to happen the way that it was planned. And I know we have a part in that. And that's the mystery. I can't even explain how He has foreknown, but yet we have choices. And so it was meant to be. You know, whoever's fault it was, you know, whoever was used in the effort to change that path, it was meant to be.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, you know, because you guys, I know you're a woman of faith, and that's a good place to feel comfort in knowing that what is will be.
Yeah, it's the only way you can find peace with things, you know, to know that you did what you could, you didn't do anything purposely to harm anybody, you were only there for their good, and to be an encourager. And
absolutely. And I hate that we're running short on time, so I want to go over a few moments with you. Speaking of Elvis and his serendipitous way with you, you moved to Los Angeles to pursue your acting. You're doing a bunch of different odd jobs, sort of things. You know, just doing different entertainment jobs, like what we do. We call that the hustle.
Singing telegrams.
Singing telegrams. Yes, all these different things. And one day you're standing on the corner, and a car pulls up to you as you're waiting for your vehicle to be repaired. And tell everybody about that interaction.
So I'm in West Hollywood, and I have this vintage car. It was 1950 Buick, restored in mint condition. It was giving me some trouble, so I took it to the garage. And they said it'll be an hour or so, you can come back. And there's a lot of shopping in the area, so I went to the crosswalk, and I was waiting at the traffic light to cross and walk down the street. And a car was sitting there waiting for the light as well. And when you're in close proximity, like in an elevator, you almost feel like you need to say something, you know, like converse. And so the man, he looks at me and he says, "Hello." I said, "Hello." And he said, "Are you an actress?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to be, but, you know, there's about 5 million people out here who look just like me, and I feel like we're all vying for the same thing." And he said, "Well, where are you from? I detect an accent." And I said, "South Georgia." And he said, "Well, are you having any success?" I said, "Well, a little." I had just gotten back from a comedy show that I was in for several months, actually in the Caesars in Atlantic City. It was new out there, and it's a whole nother story. But I was gone for like 8 months with that show, and so when you come back, it's like starting over again. You have to find that next gig, because nothing lasts forever, you know, unless you're on Wheel of Fortune, and that seems to be a great gig for Vanna and Pat. But she's from Atlanta, by the way, and I know her. Anyways,
the man that pulls up next to you in the traffic light.
And I said, "Well, you know, I just got back and I'm looking again and not really having much success." And he said, "Well, maybe I could help you." I went, strange man, me, strange woman, I don't know. He said, "Here's my card. check me out. When you're comfortable with knowing who I am, call me. And so, sure enough, I called some people, and he was very legitimate producer. So I called him, and he said, meet me for dinner. I've got some ideas for you. And he said, drive your own car. That way you know it's on the up and up. So we met in a little restaurant in Beverly Hills, and this man's name was Steve Bender. Now, he didn't know me from Adam, and I didn't know who he was. I did find out later he produced the '68 Comeback Special. So there was a connection with Elvis there. Now, this was in 1981 when I met Steve, and I met Elvis in '75. So, and I had never met Steve before, but he happened to be the man at the traffic light. I told him I should have called my book while I was standing there rather than Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights, because it seemed like I was always standing somewhere and something cool happened. But he wrote down this man's name on a piece of paper, and he said, I know the producers of the Hee Haw show, and I don't know if they're hiring, and I cannot get you a job, but I can give them a call and find out if they are hiring, and I can at least get you an interview. And I said, okay, that works. And so we left that day, and he told me to call him if anything happened or if I ever needed anything. So I called the Hee Haw show, the number, the producer, Sam Lavello, and he said, yes, Steve Bender called us about you, and we agreed to see you as a favor to him, but we're not hiring. And I said, okay, well, I scheduled to come in and read for the producers, the creators of the show, the writers, producers were all in the room, like 8 people. And they said, we have 2 girls on the show who are expecting babies, and we don't know if they're going to come back or not, because, you know, both women were married to well-to-do men. They didn't really have to work if they didn't want to, but they loved the Hee Haw show and loved working on it. And they said, you're going to read the part of Marianne Rogers and Linda Thompson. I went, okay. And I thought, Linda Thompson, she's on Hee Haw? And because after years, I saw other magazines that, you know, had her picture on it, and Elvis and all that. So I knew who she was. And she was married to Bruce Jenner at this time. So they gave me their script, and I read, and they said, thank you. You know, you have exactly what we would need for the Hee Haw show, but we don't need anybody right now. But we'll keep your name. You never know what could happen. So I left, and I thought, well, at least I got my foot in the door. Who knows what could happen? And a couple of weeks later, do you want me to tell the other part of the story, or
Please, because
the Vegas part?
Yeah, I'd love to hear that, because that's a fork in the road that happens there for you.
And in my book, I talk a little bit more about the day Elvis called me in LA, what was going on there, and how he kind of rescued me from a situation that was not so good that had happened at the place where I was staying. So, but after the Hee Haw show, I got a call from an agent who asked me if I was interested in going to Las Vegas and interviewing for a billboard ad that the Sands Hotel was doing. And I said, sure, you know, all expenses. And they gave me all the flight information. I met at the gate the agent, and there was like 15 or 20 girls, all of us coming out here. This was early '81, and maybe April, something like that. So we all get out here, and they bring us into the hotel up to a big, like a meeting room, and a man comes in, a very well-dressed, I think he was Iranian or Arab, something, but very nice looking. You could tell from head to toe he was in gold, just very, I don't know, he looked like somebody who would own a hotel and a casino. So he said, I'll be speaking to you each one by one. If you want to go freshen up and change into your interview outfits and So we all did, went to our rooms, and came back to the meeting room. And then they called me in, and I went to the next room. When I went in, it was like a big suite with bed, and I mean, like, you conduct business here? They had a desk and a chair and all that. But at this time, he's wearing the white, long and head garb that men wear in their country, that country. And I thought, very unusual, but we sat down at the desk, and he said, so tell me about yourself. And I told him, I wanted to be an actress and everything, and I'm interviewing for the billboard. And he said, so you really thought it was for a billboard? I said, that's what they said. That's what I'm here for. He said, well, actually, I'm looking for some new wives. And I wanted to increase my, his wives all lived at the Sands. And he said, did you really not know that? I said, no, I didn't move to LA to get married, especially to somebody I don't even know. And he said, well, just let me tell you the setup, and you tour the quarters of the other wives, and then you can just give me your decision. And he said, you're a little bit older than I usually like. I was 25 by this time. No, I was 30, I'm sorry. I was already 30. And he said, you're a little bit older, but I like you. You look young, and you're in good shape and all. I'm like, for what? Good shape for what? Anyway, I'm just incredibly naive, apparently. I mean, but they didn't say that. They said billboard, and that's what was in my mind when I came. So he said you would need to sign a 5-year contract. You'd need to live here at the Sands. You could not leave Las Vegas. You could go wherever you want. I would pay you $50,000 a year, and I would pay for you to go back to college. Do you have your degree? And I said, I have some college and some other training, but I don't have my bachelor's. He said, I would pay you to get your bachelor's or your master's. And any money that I give you, you invest. You don't have to spend anything. You sign for everything that you want here. All your quarters are paid for, and your wardrobe, which you'll see the other wives. And I'm just thinking, so I had not had a job since I'd gotten back in maybe September. I'd been doing singing telegrams in a gorilla suit. Yeah, I'll have to tell you that story. But, and I was looking at having to get a job in a restaurant or something to get by, because you make a lot of money, but then when you aren't working, you have to live on that. So anyway, for a minute, it crossed my mind, well, could I do this? My daddy would die if he knew. And I thought, I was just curiosity. I went and toured the quarters. All the girls went and met the other wives, and beautiful women, educated, wardrobes to die for, but they were well beyond the 5 years they had committed to. And when we were leaving their area, one of the girls came up to me and said, don't do it. You will never leave. You'll get so used to the lifestyle, the money, the lack of stress, the lack of worrying about, how to make a living. You won't leave. And I said, thank you for telling me that. I was not going to do it, but I was curious. So we got back, and he called each person in and asked for their decision. And I told him that I was very grateful, but I was going to pass, because my whole reason for being here was to be an actress, and I was not going to be able to do that. And besides that, if I get married, it's going to be for the right reasons, because I love someone, I want to spend my life with them. And he said, that's fine, that's fair. He said, for your trouble for coming out here, you can have the rest of the week to stay for free and sign for anything you want, see any show you want, eat anything you want. Just sign your name? I said, strings? He said, no strings attached. You probably won't see me again. And so I'm like, can I call my sister to come out and hang out? And he said, sure. So I called my younger sister and said, hey, come out here and hang out. And so she did. And true to his word, I never saw him again. We ate and saw shows all over Las Vegas on his dime. Never saw him again. And we went to the airport, and there was about half the amount of girls flying home, which told me that the other half stayed. And they were so young, a lot younger than me. And it broke my heart that, you know, that you can get to that place. I mean, you can, when you're pursuing your dream and you're also sacrificing some of the comforts of life and you're trying to make it on your own, you can have those thoughts. Thankfully, they're fleeting. So I flew back home, and I got to my apartment, and I have an old answering machine. Y'all might not remember those, but the light was blinking, and I punched it. And this voice came on and said, hello, this is Sam Lavello with the Hee Haw Show. We have decided that we want to hire you, and I'm prepared to give you a 5-year contract with a lot of money if you're interested. Now, that connection, you know, a few days before, I had been offered what I think might have been Satan's best. But when I got home, what was waiting for me was God's best for my life at that time.
That is the pivotal moment for you, and you went on to be on Hee Haw from 1981 to 1985. Is that correct?
Correct.
You did the full 5 years with the show.
Oh, and it was the best job of my life. Yes, being a Hee Haw honey.
Hee Haw honey.
Having what I dreamed of doing, actually getting paid for it, and having a lengthy contract. That part was so important to know that at the end of like 6 months, I didn't have to look for anything else.
Absolutely. You shot in Nashville. You got to work with Mel Tillis, Glenn Campbell, George Strait, Buck Owens,
Linda Thompson.
Linda Thompson. Can you tell us briefly, because I know we're already 15 minutes over, but because you're just, is it okay if we just go another 10 minutes? Is that okay? Since we came up to the subject, I know the Elvis fans know this. Linda Thompson was, of course, a big piece of Elvis's life. Tell me about those first interactions with Linda and how your guys' relationship blossomed afterwards.
So when I got to the Hee Haw Show, the wardrobe was our first stop. Well, actually, he said, I went into the office, signed the contract, and he said, we actually film in Nashville. Well, I thought, since the office was in LA, they filmed in it. So I thought, here I go, my second year living in LA, and I'm actually going to be going somewhere else. That was okay. We got to Nashville, and they were telling me who all was going to be there. And Linda Thompson's name came up, and I said, oh, so she decided to stay. And they said, yeah, she wants to stay on the show. So I'm like, okay, this might be tricky. Who knows? So once everybody gets there, it's really busy. We're dressing, shooting, and we don't all shoot together all the time. We have different segments that are shot, like all the cornfields are shot all day long with whoever's going to be in that cornfield for 13 shows. So we actually filmed everything that we would need for 13 shows, and then they edit those, and that's a season. So we live together just about for a month in a hotel and work every single day back and forth. So on one, and I had seen Linda in passing and all that, but I didn't really know anybody well enough to converse. I just was kind of on my own for a while till I got to know the people. But one day I was in the dressing room. All the girls had one large dressing room, and I noticed Linda was over on the other side, and I said, oh God, please don't let her see me and make me disappear. Because I didn't know, we weren't with him at the same time. There's a lot of dates and whatnot, but we won't even do that. We all have our story, and I want to respect everybody else's. And but anyway, she looked over and she said, I remember you. I said, you do? She said, yeah, you dated Elvis. I said, I did? She said, yeah. And then she said, I'm surprised he dated you. He usually likes small-breasted women. And then we just both died laughing. That was kind of her sense of humor. And we laughed, and then we talked. We never, ever talked about Elvis, ever. But we became friends, and she and Bruce fixed me up with his manager. We double dated. We did stuff together, and of course we worked together for 5 years on the Hee Haw show. And we never had a cross word, and now I haven't seen her in a long time, but we're social media friends, go back and forth a little bit, but no animosity ever. And you know, when you move on and you are in a life that you're happy, you know, she was married, had her second child, very happy, and I was single and working, I was very happy. You move on from whatever was in the past, and so because of that, we're able to work together and have good camaraderie.
That shows the class of these two women right there, that you guys were able to not only coexist, but be co-workers on the show and get along and have social time together. That shows the class of Linda, that shows the class of you, Miss Diana. It's a beautiful thing. And so, and then you went on to get married to a lovely man in Robert, and have 3 children. And he was your late husband. You guys started some incredible type of charity work and youth work for the city of Atlanta. Tell us briefly about that, if you don't mind.
So after we had our first 2 sons, we were told by the church preschool that they were hyper and that we needed to get them some medicine or something, or, you know, it was hard to keep up with them and all the other little kids. And so we're like, what are we going to do, you know, with these 2 little rowdy boys? And so we started reading some books and getting some counseling, and we decided to homeschool because boys kind of grow out of that hyperactivity after 8 or 9 years old, typically. And so we were homeschooling them, and there were not many sports for them to participate in after their 13th birthday. There was no county things or anything like that. So my husband, our boys wanted to play football really bad, and my husband played football at Ole Miss, and he was just, you know, here he had these boys that were rough and tumble, and he's like, please, I didn't want football kids. I was afraid they'd get hurt or they'd be a cad. I don't know, but finally, he and a couple of other parents got together, and they started a homeschool football program. And it gave our boys a place to play and a lot of other homeschool kids. And then it started to grow, and there were more teams. We helped start 3 or 4 more teams in our state. And now we've been, I think this is our 18th year. Now all my sons have grown up and are not in high school anymore, but they're still in need. Now it's an independent sports program for kids who may be struggling with their grades, or they're in households that are not very attentive and they need something to put a focus on, or they're in a private school or a Christian school with no sports program. So we invite them to play for this program. And my middle son is actually the head coach. After my husband passed away, we wanted to carry on his vision. And so our middle son, named Jordan, he's the head coach, and I'm the athletic director for an independent high school level tackle football program, which is still odd for me to say but it's so great. I just love it. I get to be involved with a lot of families, a lot of young people. My older son, who is here, I mentioned his name is Colt. He was actually the first player on the team, and he was 15 maybe by then. And he comes and helps some, and my youngest son, occasionally, he's single, so he's very busy.
Well, what a beautiful way to honor your late husband and help the youth. That's a beautiful thing. Character building, camaraderie, all of those things come from sports, and it shows teamwork, and it shows work ethic, and all of those good attributes that you can apply to your life in sports. So It's amazing that you were able to do that. I am so grateful, and all these stories, ladies and gentlemen, that you've been hearing, plus a ton more, are in Miss Diana's book, which is available out front here. She's going to be out doing some autographs and signings, photos with you guys after the discussion. And so I need y'all to go out there and get the book, Hollywood Lights, Nashville Nights. It is an incredible book. It's the story of your stories and Miss Chapman, is that correct?
Victoria Hallman.
Miss Hallman, from Hee Haw as well,
Yeah,
who worked
she was
with
on
Buck
the
Holmes.
Yep, and she was very close friends with Linda. We all were pretty close, actually. It was like a big sorority of girls that they called us country's Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, I love
We
that.
were all pretty close. Still are, actually.
That's beautiful. And so I want everyone to get the book. We're going to open up the floor for about 5 minutes for a couple questions. Does anybody out here in the audience have a question for Miss Diana? Looks like Bill's got one. Irv Cass is going to bring you a microphone.
Mr. Bill. How you doing, buddy?
Thank you. Diana, thank you for joining us this morning, afternoon. So Linda Thompson was actually at the previous festival here just about 10 days ago,
Oh, yeah.
where she also did an interview with her brother. So one of the questions that came up to her was, did she see the film? So I would like to ask you if you've seen the Elvis movie yet.
So I told Dean this earlier. After we were done, after Elvis passed away, I just could not watch a movie, a documentary, nothing. I could not. It was so emotional. I just couldn't even do anything Elvis. I could hardly listen to the music, and if I heard it, it would be someone else playing it. I just was so, it was just very emotional. So when I started seeing the trailers come out about the movie, I got really excited about it. And I thought, this is not like me. I'm usually just don't want to see, I just want to leave it there where it was back in that day. And but my sons went to see Top Gun, and they saw the trailer, the preview, and they're like, yeah, this is going to be a good movie. And they hadn't, you know, we didn't grow up with Elvis in our household. That was my other life. They didn't even really know too much about Elvis or anything in my past, except for my son Colt was in Sunday school one day. He told his teacher that Elvis was almost his daddy. That's about the, and they did look a little bit alike, oddly enough, but it was like 10 years later. But they were like, let's go see the movie. And so we went to a pre-release in Alpharetta, Georgia, and we're all so excited. And the minute it started, it's just, my heart started racing. It raced the whole movie. It was just, and oddly enough, I was able to set aside things that were not accurate, or things that were left out, or people that were left out, and enjoy the movie for what it was and how they captured so much of Elvis's talent and his magnetic way with ladies. I mean, Colonel Parker was a smart man. When he saw Elvis's effect on women, he knew he had something right there, because and Austin Butler was able to capture a lot of that, I think. I mean, he's such a cutie on his own, and then pair him with the Elvis personality, and the clothing was so good. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hadn't seen it, but at the end I cried. And then a couple of weeks later, I was invited to Cairo, Georgia. The oldest theater in the state of Georgia is in Cairo. It's called the Zebulon Theater. And they were going to have a showing of the movie. And they were going to have a tribute artist perform before the movie. And they wanted me to talk about Elvis before the movie the night before. And so it was like, they called it the Elvis Experience. And so I got to see the movie again with a whole theater packed full of Elvis fans, not younger people who just wanted to see a movie about Elvis and saw the good trailer, but people who actually had been a fan their whole life. And so for all that, it was just an exciting movie. I loved it. I didn't love the fact that his life seemed to end at 1972 until he died, because we all know there was a lot more. And I would like to have seen them show a little of the generosity side of Elvis and the playful side. Because I have some stuff in my book. He was very playful and prankish and thought for the moment. And the generosity, I think when people think of him other than for his music, they know how generous he is. There's a lady in my town who had a car accident when she was little, and Elvis paid her hospital bill because she was on her way. She's a friend of mine, and I asked her if I could share her story on Facebook the other day. But she was on her way to his concert with her mom, and they had a car wreck. And Elvis found out about it, went to the hospital, visited her, and paid her hospital bill. That's the kind of thing I would like to have seen added. But again, you can't make an 8-hour movie. It would take more than that to include. But yes, I love the movie, and I definitely think everybody should see it. And even though I'm not the star, I still want it to do good. I want the younger generation to see and know about Elvis and, keep his memory alive.
It's incredible that Elvis has the #1 movie in the world right now, and #1 on the Billboard soundtrack charts. Doja Cat's Vegas song is #7 in the world right now, and we're 45 years past Elvis's passing, and Elvis is still just as relevant today as he was of all time, really, of all time,
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have one more question that we can do, and then we have to wrap it up because we have a show to do at 3 o'clock, is that correct? And so we've actually gone 30 minutes over, but I've enjoyed every second of it. And I've loved this. If you want to hear more, you got to get that book. So make sure you guys stop over there. We have this last question right here from this young lady. What is your name, hon?
Hi, I'm Karen.
Hi, Miss Karen.
My question is, you can, kind of a deep question, but looking back now, what would your older self now give advice to your younger self about your time with Elvis?
Yeah, that is a good question. Of course, with anything that's in the past, you wish that you had savored it more. Maybe were more delicate with things you said or communicate more. Maybe been a little more patient. But I don't think I would have changed. Like, our time together was really awesome. And the hope of the future for that was really awesome. But I don't know. I might not have. I might have driven my own car, not knowing. You're so carefree then. And not that I was ever in any danger at all or threat, or that's another really sweet thing. I never felt a moment of uncomfortableness, if that's a word, in his company, or so I don't know how much I would have changed, except maybe I shouldn't have mouthed off about some of the things they were giving him. But I had to. I was crazy about him, and so I don't know. Maybe not anything.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Miss Diana Goodman a big round of applause. Thank you, Diana, for sitting down and talking with us Elvis fans. We love you. And thanks again.
Thank you for coming and listening.